Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in. We are sitting down with Scott Pope, and we wanted to introduce him because he is a new member of the Method team, as well as coming in with the responsibility of helping to stand up a new vertical for the company. So Scott, thank you for taking the time to sit down and introduce yourself.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me, Josh.
I'm excited to, let's just go ahead and jump right in here. Give us a brief breakdown. What are you doing with the company now, and how long have you been with the company?
Yeah, so today's actually my 1 month anniversary.
Yeah.
I started March 13th. We're recording this on April 13th. So I've been here 30 days. I guess technically my first day was the 13th of March, but I had jury duty that day. So I didn't come in until that Tuesday, the 14th. But yeah, today's my 1 month anniversary. But I have a different angle on the company because I've known Method / Skookum for many years.
Yeah.
Being here in Charlotte, and a long relationship with the founders, and many of the people on the revenue team I'm working with now have known for many years. It's been great getting to meet so many new people inside of the organization.
Yeah.
I didn't know were here.
When I had to laugh because I had, to your point, I had seen you so many times at so many events that we've had, and we've grown so much through COVID and are just now starting to have people coming back into the office fairly regularly. And so I seeing you at all the events, I at some point I made the assumption that, oh, you must have been somebody we hired through COVID, right? And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, that's Scott. We just hired him. I'm like, he's been here. What do you mean? They're like, no, we just hired him.
Yeah, so I've been a good friend of the family for quite a while. And it's good to actually technically officially be on board with Method. As you kind of alluded to, my role here, my technical title is Global Lead Healthcare and Life Sciences. And it is kind of taking responsibility for corralling all the things that we do in the healthcare space, and being more intentional about how we go to market with that as an offering. It's been really liberating for me, the first kind of 30 days of being on board, getting to see all of the amazing bench of talent that we have in the healthcare space. Yeah. That from an external perspective, you don't hear about.
Right.
And so people don't categorize us necessarily as a healthcare company, but man, from the inside looking in, there's so much core capability here, so much experience, so many great case studies and testimonials that have been written that, I initially thought I was going to have to do a little bit of what the right word is, massaging a bit, to kind of inflate some of the stuff we've done. But in fact, it's really going to be more of a job of consolidating and simplifying the broad expanse of the work that we've done into something that's very consumable to hit our target audience.
Well, and I think for the folks who have listened to the podcast, that maybe isn't a huge surprise if you factor in how many people we have from so many varied backgrounds, and I think that's one of the things that has made us such a good company is that we're not looking for this person fits everything we need right here, get this person, versus this person's extremely talented and we can apply their skills. Yep. And so the result of that is we do have a lot of folks from other industries where maybe at the time weren't necessarily a direct correlation to work that was happening. But now that we're starting to move into the healthcare space, now we're seeing like all of these people who have healthcare backgrounds and healthcare experience and working in digital spaces with healthcare companies, whether that is some of past Method work or whether that's with their past lives.
Sure. Yeah, it's been impressive to see that, and just to amplify your point a little bit, the body of work that's been done at Method is impressive. But people in their prior lives have done work in the pharmacy benefit management company and the insurance company for healthcare providers, med device, pharma. I mean, they've, digital therapeutics. There's a really deep bench of healthcare talent and expertise here.
So give us a little bit of your background. So you're coming in with a pretty well-rounded history in a lot of the touch points that we're looking to tackle here. So it seemed like you were a pretty good fit for what we were looking for. So give the listeners a little bit of a recap of kind of what did your journey here look like?
I like the politically correct way that you said that I'm old. That was really nice. A lot of really well-rounded.
I wasn't even trying to do that.
I've been around for a very long time. I'm in the third decade of my career, all in healthcare. I'm obviously just giving you a hard time, but yeah, no, I've done a lot of different things, and I've been super fortunate to get to see many different corners of healthcare that a lot of people don't have the luxury of being able to do. So I got a Doctor of Pharmacy degree from Ohio Northern University up in Ohio with a minor in business. I spent, the first decade of my career becoming a pharmacist and taking care of patients in hospitals. I specialized in infectious diseases, did residency at Moses Cone up in Greensboro, a residency at Duke, worked here in Charlotte at what's now Atrium Health. And so I got the chance to be on the front lines and take care of patients.
Yeah.
I was on executive call at Atrium the night that Hurricane Katrina hit.
Oh man.
And we evacuated patients all the way up here. I mean, some of the experiences I have in healthcare, like you can't replace those.
Right.
It's pretty impactful. But I had the opportunity to leave direct patient care and spent my entire 30s as a healthcare intrapreneur. So I was working for a company here in Charlotte called Premier, and basically launched new business lines for them under the safety net of what became a publicly traded company. So I kind of climbed the corporate lattice at Premier for a decade, and got to see so many interesting elements of alternative payment models, accountable care organizations. Really learned how to bring collaborations together with a lot of various stakeholders, from hospitals and health systems to pharma and med device company, the outcomes research division I got to work with at Premier, and had just a really remarkable experience throughout my entire 30s there at Premier. As I turned 40, kind of hit a bit of a midlife crisis and felt like I wasn't really making the deep, impactful change that I wanted to make in healthcare. Yeah. And had the chance to go really live out some of my entrepreneurial dreams. And work with earlier stage healthcare companies that were trying to make really a lot more disruptive changes to the healthcare environment. My wife and I have been married for a little more than 20 years. We have 2 daughters. Sophie's soon to be 14 next week, and Ava's 11. And those 2 girls deserve a better healthcare system than the one that we have to live through. Yeah. And so any little dent that I can make to change that is what I'm trying to do. And that entrepreneurial journey was really fun for me, Josh, but at the same time, the thing that I missed the most I was kind of a lone wolf in that part of my life. And I did a lot of really great work and got to work with some great people, but I really never had a team.
Yeah.
And so having, as we've already alluded to, this deep bench of really amazing people to get to work with, to guide, to learn from, to mentor, and to get to release some of their gifts into the healthcare realm is something I'm super excited about here at Method.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, so I think that's actually a perfect segue into some of what I was curious about getting your thoughts on, and that is, I think everyone has healthcare horror stories, right? Unfortunately, but there's also everyone also I think has some really powerful moments where they've seen it work the way we want it to work. And so for you, I guess this is a 2-part question for you, but moving into this role, knowing the opportunity that we have to impact the healthcare space, what are the things that you are most optimistic about, that you're looking forward to? And then what are some of the biggest hurdles that you see within the space?
Yeah, really good question. It's interesting to say, somebody who's spent as much time in healthcare as I have, what are you optimistic about? Because, man, you spend a whole lot of time looking inside of healthcare, and it feels like doom and gloom in every possible turn. Like, man, the way that we pay for this stuff is broken. The way we can't shop for this is broken. The actual experience is broken. For physicians and nurses and pharmacists, that the burnout is through the roof. Like that part's broken. And it's really easy to get into a pessimistic loop around healthcare. But I think there's a number of really good things to be optimistic about. And some of this is a little bit of a reflection or a look into my brain and my ethos. One of the things I'm most optimistic about in healthcare is that we're going to clip the 20% GDP mark in terms of how much money we spend in healthcare, right? There's a lot of people that look at that and go, that's terrible because we're spending all that money and not getting, better outcomes.
Yeah. Or are we spending that money because we think it needs fixed or there's something's not working properly?
So that's my take on it. Is the good news is we're spending plenty of money on healthcare.
Yeah.
We don't need to put more money into this. There's plenty of money here. We just need to put it into different places and put it to work in different initiatives.
Yeah.
And get the money working in different hands. And so that's one of the things I'm really excited about here at Method is we have the opportunity to really redirect where some of those dollars are going into things that are really driving meaningful outcomes and meaningful experiences. What I've seen, and if you want to do a 2.5 hour podcast on this, I'm happy to go a little bit more long-winded, but other things I'm optimistic about that kind of sets the stage for where I think Method can play a really important role here in the future is I contend that and I've been saying this for a number of years, we're at the beginning stages of a renaissance in healthcare in this country, and it's a renaissance of consumerism. When you start to look at the different layers that we have in our U.S. healthcare system, it feels like it's designed for complexity, and it's designed to keep people from getting the right information they need at the moment they need it to make very informed decisions. And that includes patients, it includes caregivers, it includes physicians and nurses and pharmacists, and other care providers. And I think the consumerism revolution and renaissance that we're seeing is going to change some of that.
Yeah.
The standards that we accept outside of healthcare, for purchasing cars, for shopping, for picking out a restaurant, the level of information and detail we can get about those experiences, we don't get a fraction of that in healthcare.
Well, and I was going to ask you about that because I feel like you do see that everywhere else. And so why is that the case for healthcare? Is it just because we have accepted that to be the norm? Are there things in place that prevent that from happening? Or what do you think is the hurdle?
So Josh, I think healthcare itself it's a very complex topic, right? And in the Innovator's Prescription, Clayton Christensen did a good job of talking about the elements of healthcare where we actually have black and white answers of therapies to choose, places to go to get healthcare, right? If you're in an automobile accident, you go to the emergency room for care.
Yeah.
Right. And so there's some of those things that are very black and white and scripted for like a traumatic event. But when it comes to primary care, and chronic care management, some of those things are even a little more gray. Yeah. Does this require an endocrinologist to be seen to manage, part of my diabetes? Maybe. Could it be done by a primary care doctor? Maybe. Could some of it be done by a PA or nurse practitioner?
Yeah.
By a pharmacist, by an RN, by an MA? And in Innovator's Prescription, Clayton Christensen did a really good job of highlighting those things that are the difference between the black and white and the more nebulous things. And I think the fact that that there are so many nebulous things that don't have black and white answers, it by nature creates a very complex environment. But I think the powers that also run a lot of this have leaned into some of that complexity versus trying to thin it out and make it more straightforward.
Because I think it's easy, at least I'm speaking on my own behalf, it's easy for me to sometimes forget that so much of the health issues that we are trying to address in those moments are intertwined they're systematic. So it's, for sure. If you have an ailment, you're going to the doctor. Well, that could be, you could be experiencing that symptom or that effect because of something else entirely different that you aren't even aware of yet. And so that could, there's so many, we oftentimes want it to just be the quick black and white answer, and
straightforward.
It's easy to forget that our bodies are not super simple.
They are not. No,
to take care of.
It's very complex. It is very complex. A fun story that I like to weave into some of that, and it plays into the consumerism part of the story too a little bit, is imagine that you're in a car accident and you need to go get a new car because yours was totaled. And you go onto the Range Rover, Land Rover dealership and tell the salesperson that you need a new automobile. You can't leave the lot today without a new automobile. The money you're going to spend on this isn't really your money. It's kind of the insurance company's money. And you don't know the first thing about automobiles. Nothing. Like, you can just see that salesperson start to salivate, right? And they're calling in their friends like, I got one on the hook. Like, you have to come see this.
Yeah.
We would never do that today. We have all the opportunities to go do all kinds of research. You may even pre-build the car that you're going to buy. You can custom pick the type of stitching you want in the seats, right? Do you want leather, cloth? There's so many different features you can customize before you even step onto the lot. Now, the reason I use the Range Rover specifically example is because it costs about $90,000 to have your hip replaced.
Yeah.
Now, right? That might not be what your out of pocket is, but in general, that's a rough estimate of what a hip replacement would cost. And I had the opportunity a couple weeks ago to talk to a friend who just had his hip replaced. And I told him that story, and he goes, I don't understand. I said, okay, well, you have a new hip that costs $90,000 in you. What brand is it? And he kind of looked at me. I have no idea. I mean, is it Stryker? Is it Dupuis? What Medtronic? What is it? I had no idea, right? Yeah. And so he had literally gone to talk to his physician and took whatever the physician said was right at face value. And not that the physician's a salesperson, like there's not a one-to-one equivalent on the analogy there, but when you start to take some of these things as examples outside of healthcare and apply the way we behave in a healthcare dynamic, it's laughable.
Well, and that's not even, and I know that's not what you're saying. I just want to clarify for the listeners too. Like, that's not even a knock on the doctors or physicians or anything, because they're hopefully acting in the best interest of the patient anyways. But the bigger issue here that you're bringing up is that, yes, but it's still this incredibly huge operation that's taking place that's extremely expensive. Why don't I know more about it?
Sure.
But if you're telling me, okay, go figure that out, I wouldn't know how to find that information.
The system's not built for you to have that information, right? And so that's the number of layers to that story go pretty deep. But like, all right, do you have a Kia? Do you have a Honda? Do you have a Toyota? Is it a Range? A Maserati? Like, what kind of hip do you have?
Because I think most people probably hear that and they're thinking, well, it's just like we only make like Land Rovers, right, for hips, right? Is there a bad option here, right? Like, sure. I think most people would want to know, like, okay, what are the options? Is there one that's better than the others? And what's the cost difference? So that might be the answer to this. I know we're kind of blurring the questions together here a little bit, but I know you spoke about what are you most optimistic about. Is the information gap what you think the biggest hurdle is, or are there others?
So I think one of the biggest hurdles is that the distance that the consumer's been kept from making a lot of those decisions, right? And one of the things I'm optimistic about is that more and more people are getting converted to these high deductible health plans. Mm-hmm. And so every dollar that each consumer spends is more and more of their money versus the insurance company's money. And as people as they get closer to the spend, it's more of their money. They want to be more educated about what they're actually buying. And is this the best place for me to buy my hip? Can I go across the street and get the exact same one cheaper?
Right.
Is my experience going to be better over there? And as we start demanding, as consumerism really takes hold and we start demanding better experiences in healthcare, and as I say consumerism again, just to repeat this, Josh, the consumers, I think in many scenarios are patients, but sometimes those consumers are caregivers. Sometimes those consumers are physicians, they're care providers, and they need a better experience with the hip they're putting in.
Yeah.
Method's actually done a fair amount of work with Medtronic on a digital device that helps patients with Parkinson's, right? And so the physician is the consumer in that particular scenario. And I think consumers, again, are going to have much higher, greater demands for that experience with healthcare to get better, and look no further than where we're at with Method.
Yeah.
That consumer experience is something that we understand at a granularity that few people even ever dive into or explore. And we've done that in the financial services industry. We've done it in the retail, truly consumer side. We've done it in a handful of places in healthcare too. And so as I see that that macro trend of consumerism setting into healthcare, the timing for Method to really step up and own our space and our role in that ecosystem, it couldn't be better.
So do you think that is kind of maybe it's not just one thing, but what is that the role that you see Method, or the place that Method can make the biggest impact, is the customer experience, the customer journey, and like understanding that and bringing that to a client, hopefully helping them structure that experience in a new way? Or are there more applications that you see?
Yeah, I think there's, and one of the things that I feel like Method is really good at, and I don't even have all the language yet internally of how we talk about a lot of these things, but when you talk about consumer experience, there's kind of there's a research and advisory component to that, where you kind of have to unpack what the issues are that are really being encountered by the particular consumer that you're working with. Yeah. There's a strategic level of, okay, what are the opportunities to really fix those problems, and how do we deeply understand? We understand the problems very deeply now. How do we remedy those in the most simple, graceful way possible? And then taking it to the kind of the third step of, well, let's go build that solution. Yeah. Right. And I feel like that kind of advisory, the design, and then the development, and even ongoing support and perpetuity, all three of those buckets, we've got core competency to be able to do all three of those.
And I think that's one of the things that we pride ourselves on so much is we often get, the majority of the time, we're getting pulled into client work because the client comes in and says, we need X to solve our problems. And we never take that lightly, but we also want to step back and say, let's make sure that is what you need first.
Sure.
Because oftentimes we're solving for problems that aren't actually the problem, they're the symptom. Yeah. And so rewinding a little bit, make sure let's get to the heart of the issue. And oftentimes the client knows themselves better and better than we do, and they've got it right. And other times they've missed something. And sometimes you need a fresh set of eyes to help you go back. Hey, actually, you wouldn't have this problem if we fixed this thing over here.
Sure.
Right. And it sounds like there's most likely a lot of opportunity to apply that thought process into the medical space.
There absolutely is. Yeah, 100%. And from a pharmacist perspective, the parallel to that is finding out that somebody's on a medication to treat an adverse event being caused by another medication. And if you just adjust the dose of the first one to the proper dose, you would alleviate the side effect and be able to take the second med off altogether, right? And so you come to me with a cough, I can either try to treat the cough, or I can realize that your ACE inhibitor is probably causing the cough and adjust that and give you a different med to relieve the cough, and I don't have to treat the cough anymore.
Yeah.
Right. So something like that. And there's plenty of opportunities on the healthcare consumer experience side to make sure that you're asking the right questions, right? And I think that's an important role that we play in that engineering design paradigm. Mm-hmm. Let's solve the actual problem that needs to be solved.
Yeah. I want to jump into just getting to know you a little bit better. But before we do that, is there anything else on the healthcare side that we haven't touched on that you feel like you want to just dig into anymore?
No, I think, when I look at my healthcare career and all the things that I'm very proud to have been able to accomplish over the last 25 plus years in this space, I'm really optimistic for what the future holds here with Method. Mm-hmm. Getting the chance to work with really bright people who are passionate about healthcare. I was talking to our head of revenue here, Michael Lum, earlier today actually about this. And I said, what I've encountered since I got started here is a group of really passionate people, specifically passionate about healthcare.
Yeah.
And they aren't waiting for an invitation to get involved. They're jumping in and saying, hey, I want to be part of this. I want to be on that boat, that healthcare boat that is, let me be part of that team that's rowing.
Yeah.
And I think we'll get a little bit more guidance and direction on making sure we're all rowing in the same direction. But in the meantime, I told Lon, I said, you can't give people passion. They're coming with the passion. And we just need to make sure that we're putting that energy in the right vector, going the right direction.
Well, and I like that thought process, because what I do know is the people that we have, to your point, extremely talented, very passionate. And that, I think, is powerful in this industry, because while there's so many hurdles that maybe need to overcome, the people who are working in the healthcare industry are some of the most passionate people, the most sacrificial people, who want this to work, because they're going into this because they want to help people. They want to care for people. They want people to get better. And so I think there's just a lot of opportunity when those two sides of the coin come together. I think we have an opportunity to make a pretty big impact.
I couldn't agree more. Healthcare is a very powerful emotional experience. And every one of us is either we're a patient, we're a caregiver, we're a parent of a patient. We're all obviously paying for healthcare. And so we all have had a front row seat to that in one way or another, whether we've worked in the industry or not. And it's such a powerful, visceral, emotional experience, whether it's a good one or a bad one, that everybody's coming with, with energy to want to go after that.
Yeah.
And again, I'm super excited to get to work with the team here at Method to push that in a really positive direction.
Yeah. So let's segue into getting to know you a little bit better, just outside of the work, when the laptop's not on, right? Tell us. We believe that everybody is a nerd about something in their life. For you, what is that thing that you like to nerd out on? What occupies your time when you're not on the computer?
That's a funny question, because as an infectious diseases pharmacist by background, I'm kind of a nerd at heart. Like the whole part of it.
That's just who you are all the time.
The whole thing is just nerd all the time. And while most people would look at like a global pandemic and think it's the worst thing to ever happen, I'm like, man, the epidemiology part of this COVID thing is like really fascinating to me. And like, to get to dive into that and studied it, and, to talk to my wife and I sitting at dinner, and this is how boring my dinner table can get, but my daughter's asking me questions about COVID, and like sharing, my epidemiology background and infectious disease background, and educating that, and telling them, when you guys are in your mid-30s, there will be people still studying the 2020 global pandemic of COVID-19. They'll make entire careers out of it. But so just baseline being very nerdy in general. One of the other things I find really interesting is green energy. Mm-hmm. And I like to nerd out on, especially if we're around a campfire, I've got a cold adult beverage or a bourbon or something. Yeah. And I'll explain to my kids that the campfire that we're burning is actually a solar energy powered fire. And they're like, what are you talking about? I said, well, the energy that we're burning right now came from the tree. Yes. The tree's probably 100 years old.
Yeah.
Right? Let's just rough it out. But where did the tree get its energy from? Like, what does it take to grow a tree? And so I'll nerd out into the, all the way down to the photosynthesis. And well, the tree then got its energy from the sun. So the energy stored in the tree came from the sun 100 years ago. So that, therefore, the campfire is a solar fire.
Yeah.
And they kind of look at me and I'm like, now we can do the same thing for coal. We can do the same thing for gasoline.
Yeah.
Everything is solar energy. The gasoline that you burn in your car came from the sun 1 billion years ago and has been stored in the ground for forever.
But I don't get the same tax credits for that.
You don't get the same tax credits. It's totally different. But I love nerding out on that stuff, and it makes my girls' eyes roll sometimes. Yeah. But that's why I do it around the campfire. You can't see the eye rolling quite as much when it's
when it gets so dark, you get you get shielded from some of those reactions.
Yeah, but I was pleasantly surprised as I came on board and doing some of the Hitachi onboarding stuff to see the very strong bias and lens that they want to get involved in more of the green energy. I think there's tons of opportunity to revolutionize the energy sources we use on this planet.
Yeah, and that is a big push that they have. And we have, even at Method, we do have a team of folks who are very, very focused on what role can we play to help in that effort that Hitachi's doing, and just trying to inform our own team here as far as like on a micro level, what can we do as individuals? Well, outside of the nerding out on the green energy and the global pandemic, which sounds like you just have some hobbies that just are extremely lighthearted.
That's right. Nailed it, dude. Yep, exactly. Yeah, I'm not deep philosophical at all, just kind of surface, fun. Yep.
So what, when you're not nerding out on some of those things, what occupies your time? Like,
well, so I've mentioned my daughters a couple different times. Love spending time with my family. Yeah. I think healthcare is a really easy problem to solve. I think green energy is a really easy problem to solve, compared to figuring out how to be a really good dad.
Yeah,
is just it's such an ongoing struggle. I like to think that I'm trying to do a good job of it.
Yeah.
But our daughters are into basketball and volleyball, and our youngest picked up a violin recently. Starting to play.
That's a hard instrument to listen to when you're first. It's like it's awful until you're good.
Yeah, and the distance between those two things, I couldn't tell you how far it is, but I know I'm still at the early stages of it. But wanting to encourage them to, have fun and be a kid, but also start to explore some of their passions. Our oldest daughter enjoys pet sitting and babysitting, and she wants to be in business. She wants to be an entrepreneur at some point, like her dad was for a while. And so as we're kind of looking at what she charges for rates for babysitting, I was like, Zoph, the reason you're busy all the time is because your rates are too low.
Yeah,
you need to up your rates. And so I finally convinced her that she needed to up her rates, and she was kind of hesitant, reluctant that she wasn't going to have work anymore. And so she tells one of the families she babysits for that her rates are going up on her birthday, and the family goes, can we lock in the rate now, the current rate? She's like, yeah, for $1,000. And so they paid her $1,000 to lock in the current rate. And so like the fun part of the business story was, man, like look at your pricing structure, right? For your little business that you're running, and understand that you were probably selling yourself short this whole time.
Right.
And then we also get into and again, I can't keep anything surface level and lighthearted apparently, because here my daughter is babysitting and I'm giving her lessons on recognized revenue versus sales, and like you can't go spend that $1,000 because you haven't technically earned it yet, and so we're going to hold on to to some of that and feed it to you as you do the work. And but I love spending time with my family. The fact that I've had the privilege of being a dad to those two awesome girls is awesome.
I always like to tell the story of we had our oldest daughter, who's 5 now, but I remember vividly the moment we're driving back from the hospital with her, and it was like the light bulb went off, where in my head, I don't know why this had never occurred to me before, but that was the moment where I'm like, oh crap, my dad was just making it up the whole time.
Winging it.
Like, because I'm starting to think through all the things that I'm now responsible for that I wasn't yesterday. And now all of a sudden you're like, well, how did dad know how to do that? Oh, crap, he didn't. He was just figuring it all out. Like in my head, there's this thing where you just, at some point, you get the answers. And then you realize, oh, no, we don't.
Not even close. Not even close. Yeah, on the basketball front, fun kind of story to build off of that. So our oldest daughter, Sophie, started playing basketball 2 years ago. And I played basketball as a kid growing up most of my life, and got to play in college for a year even. So like, nice. I know the game well.
Yeah.
And like, as I try to teach the game to her, she really doesn't, dad doesn't know anything, right? It kind of brushes me off. And we were at a Myers Park High School boys game last fall. And there was a scenario they were playing Olympic, and Myers Park was up 12-2 or 12-4. And I grabbed Sophie. I said, like, we're running away with this game, and it's early on, first quarter, and I was like, this is going to get ugly. And I grabbed Sophie. I said, here's what's going to happen: Olympic's going to go down and miss their shot. Myers Park's going to get the rebound, come back and score, and Olympics coach is going to call a timeout. She kind of looked at me like, go away, Dad. And sure enough, that's exactly what transpired. And the look of shock and awe when she turned around and looked at me and goes, oh, like, you were right. I'm like, yeah, like I've been around this game, and like let's use this opportunity for me to teach you a couple things about boxing out.
Yeah.
You know, but
and also remember this, because there might be other things I know about.
Yeah. Heaven forbid, right? That I've kind of been down that path.
I remember there's a karate studio in town, and it's got this big picture window, like probably 15 feet long, maybe 20 feet long, and 8 feet high. And so every time you drive through Main Street in our town, you can see everybody inside practicing. Yeah. And my daughter is like, I want to learn how to do that. I want to do that. And I'm like, well, like Daddy can teach you that. I did this for like 15 years, like I was really good at it. Yeah. It's like, no, Daddy, I want someone who knows what they're doing. And I'm like, it's from a 5-year-old. And I'm just like, what the heck? Like, why do you just assume I don't know what I'm doing?
You don't know what you're talking about. Yeah. No, it's so much fun, and it's a steep learning curve. And I agree. As a parent, you kind of figure out the best answer in a certain scenario and just kind of roll with it.
Yeah.
But every minute that I get is, just to spend with my kids I have made pivotal, decisions in my career to stay off the road.
Yeah.
At this time, because you don't get these years back with them. And yeah, they've shaped a lot of, what I've become professionally, and hopefully I get to do the same for them.
Yeah. We're coming up on the end of our time here. So thank you, Scott, for just letting us get to know you a little bit better. We're excited to have you here and excited to see kind of what comes of this new effort as we move forward in the healthcare space. But anything you want to leave the listeners with? How can they get a hold of you? What's the best way to do that?
Yeah, Josh, I really appreciate you having me on. This has been a lot of fun, and hopefully we can do it again pretty soon here. I guess, my only closing remarks, I've had the privilege of getting to meet a lot of people here at Method that have, in a global logic, that have an interest in healthcare. For anybody internally that wants to, to talk shop, to share ideas, thoughts, concerns about healthcare, find me on Slack. If you're outside of the organization here and want to do that, look me up on LinkedIn. Always looking to bring in new perspectives and new ideas. And I think healthcare takes a village to make better.
Yeah.
And I want to make sure that I'm taking as many village people into consideration in the process there as we move along. So I'm always open to a coffee, to a Zoom, to a new conversation. And again, really appreciate you having me on.